1 second.
You don't have to do the whole now if you want.
Okay, we're ready.
Okay. Well, I'm Sid Miller, and I'm running for Texas Agriculture Commissioner. Fourth generation farmer and rancher. I grow crops, cattle, horses, and trees in Stephenville, Texas. I've always made my living off the land, and I've also served 12 years in the Texas House, 6 terms. I was chair of the Agriculture and Livestock Committee. Prior to that, I was vice chairman of the Agriculture and Livestock Committee, and served 3 terms on it. The reason that that's important in this race is that committee actually had jurisdiction over the Texas Agriculture Department and the Agriculture Commissioner. Also my time there, I was a founding member of the Legislative Tea Party Caucus with Dan Patrick. I served as chairman of my House Republican Caucus. I also chaired the Homeland Security and Public Safety Committee, which has jurisdiction over the Texas Highway Patrol, Texas Rangers. That's the committee that secures the Texas border with work that Texas does down there. Emergency management, emergency evacuation and such. I got in this race late. Wasn't going to run. People in the agriculture community started calling me. They said, of these guys running, they're all nice guys, but none of them are really the face of agriculture. We believe that they're just using this as a rung on the ladder to move to a higher elected office. And we should consider getting in the race because you're an ag guy and you are the face of agriculture. Conservatives across the state started calling also, and different story though. They said, you know, these guys that are in the race, they're all moderates or rhinos. We don't have a real conservative in the race, and you're one of the conservative leaders in the House. We'd like you to consider getting in. We think you're qualified. You'd make a really good ag commissioner. I'd tell them no. Then my House colleagues started calling, and saying the same thing. And then I got a call from the front runner, a good friend of mine, Brandon Creighton. Oh boy, I know what he's I'm dreading this conversation because he thinks I'm getting in the race against him, and I wasn't. So he called and said, hey, I hear you're thinking about getting in the race. I said, well, not really. He said, well, you need to get in. I said, what? He said, you need to get in because next week I'm getting out, and you need to get in the race. Well, at that point, my wife had always been encouraging me to get in it, but we prayed about it, really gave it some serious consideration, talked to my family about it, and so I'm in to win it. And we're running a grassroots campaign. I've spent the last month working conservative leaders across the state, conservative groups across the state. Just about everyone that has endorsed our campaign, and we're hoping to get more. We got off to a good start by getting my friend Ted Nugent to be my campaign treasurer and co-chair. David Riddle is also a state co-chair. He's heading up my Harris County effort down here. 8-time world champion Cowboy Joe Beaver is also state co-chair. We got Texas Right to Life. I was the one that carried the sonogram bill back in 2011. I was their legislator of the year. The Montgomery County Right to Life honored me here at their banquet with their legislator of the year award back in 2011. We've got Young Conservatives of Texas. We've helped me out, Coach. Who else we got?
Texans for Fiscal Responsibility, Kathy Adams with Eagle Forum.
Yeah.
North Texas Tea Party, Tea Approved, Northeast Tarrant Tea Party, Waco Tea Party.
David Barton, Wall Builders, Jonathan Signs, Texas Values, a long list. You can go to my website, millerfortexas.com. They're all on there. We're adding more. We added another one today. The North Texas Tea Party approved this candidate interview much like this one tonight. So we think we're doing well, and it is a grassroots effort. With 35 Republicans running statewide, they've been shaking the money trees for about 4 or 5 months. So, but we're doing well on that aspect too. So we'll spend about another week on that, and then we'll start going after agriculture groups. Most agriculture groups don't endorse until after the filing is over. There was a rumor that Nolan Ryan might get in, so that kind of chilled everybody out. He's obviously didn't get in. And then a lot of them like to wait until after the ethics report, financial reports come out June 15th to see who's really serious about being a candidate, and then they'll start falling in line. We have already received the endorsement of the Quarter Horse Association, so we're glad to get that. I've married for 36 years. I have 2 grown sons. One's a firefighter and one's a coach. I have 2 grandbabies. We've owned property there in Erath County, Stephenville. Been there since 1985. I got out of graduated college at Tarleton State University with a degree in agricultural education. Taught vocational agriculture for 5 years in the public school system. Then went into business for myself, farming and ranching, and actually growing trees. So that's pretty much my story.
Okay. Appreciate that. I don't think your alarm is on. Okay, so what we'll do is go around the table and you have up to 2 minutes, and we want to relegate it to
Sure.
just you, the candidate,
Okay.
doing the answering from that perspective, so.
TDA provides financial assistance to farmers and ranchers and loan guarantees and interest rate reductions. Give me an example of what kind of loan that you, TDA.
Okay, what TDA, actually TDA doesn't do any subsidies. They don't give out dollars to farmers. The U.S. government does plenty of that, too much of it. The problem that the TDA is trying to address is the average age of the farmer and rancher in Texas is 62. So the Texas Department of Agriculture is taking on itself, and I think rightly so, to encourage and make the pathway for younger farmers and ranchers to get in the business. So what they do, there's money set aside, and it is taxpayer dollars, and it's set aside to make guarantee low interest loans, and there's a very small portion of that is used as direct loans at a lower interest rate. Now, the history of those has been real good, very little to no default on those, so it really hasn't cost the taxpayer any money. That has all stayed hold, so it's really not a subsidy. It's more of the Republican theory of giving a hand up instead of a handout. So I think it's a good program.
How much land is readily usable for farming and ranching that's not already in use?
Oh gosh,
That's a bunch.
most of the readily farmland is being farmed. We're having record prices for crops, and that's taking any idle land out and put it back in production for the most part. They're not making any more farmland.
Isn't a good bit on federal land though?
Basically, there's no federal land in Texas. When Texas, part of their treaty was that we didn't give up any of our land like the Western Territories did. We have given some land to the federal government, like in Big Bend and some of the forests.
Right.
But for the most part, Texas uses those resources to fund our public school system. It's not actually managed by the Texas Agriculture Department, it is through the
Forestry or
the
Fish and
Land
Wildlife.
Office, Land Commissioner,
a link. Okay.
oversees all our royalties and lands and income off of those.
Okay, I've been leading up our research efforts, and one of the things that came up during that was this ethics complaint that was filed, I guess, by McCraig, regarding you taking a loan and then paying yourself interest on that, paying yourself back 12 years later.
Sure.
So if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think it's a frivolous complaint, and this typically happens, and I'm sure you've seen it in other races. When they can't beat you on the issues and they can't beat you on the endorsements, they start slinging mud and digging. And anybody can file an ethics complaint. It doesn't have to be valid. And the Ethics Commission, the time they process it and adjudicate it, the election's over and the damage is done. Matter of fact, at the last Ethics Commission meeting, they put out a resolution condemning that practice. You can pull it up on their website. Probably should have brought an example of that. In 2000, I was filed as a Republican to run for state representative against an incumbent Democrat. Republican had never held that office before. I was a third-tier candidate, and there's only 3 tiers. I mean, I had basically no chance. So at the beginning of the campaign, I put $10,000 of my own dollars in the race. I mean, I was committed. And I never filled out an ethics form before, and it said interest rate. And I just made an operating loan from my bank for 10%, so I put 10%. I wanted to, be active. Knowing full well that it's probably just flushing that money down the toilet, I'll probably never get it back. So my intention was never to make a profit off of that. I ended up leaving that money in there because I think I had 15 opponents in 6 elections, and I never could, relax. So when I finally left office, I went back and cleared everything out and closed my account down, and that was one of the things that I disposed of. He says that we passed a law, in 2011, that forbids a candidate from reimbursing himself more than the actual loan. That did become law. Of course, in Texas, we don't make laws retroactive. It's unconstitutional, and this was done in 2000, 11 years prior to that law passing.
You paid yourself back?
Yes.
When?
I closed out my entire campaign account and shut it down.
In what year?
In 2012.
Okay, and when was the law made that you just mentioned?
2011.
2011, yeah.
So you could pay yourself back after the law was passed, but you couldn't loan yourself any money and pay that back after the law was passed.
From the time the law was signed forward, it was in effect. Yeah.
You couldn't make loans, but you could repay.
You could still make the loan.
But
You just couldn't charge yourself interest on the loan.
0% interest.
Yeah,
That's what I get.
That's what we get anyway.
right. And that's about what it is today anyway, right? 10% sounds exorbitant today, but at that time it was, and you can check it out, that was the interest rate at that time.
John?
One thing you referred to in your questionnaire deals with disasters, and that basically the TDA should be the one to allocate the resources, and time is a disaster regarding agriculture. So my question is, what resources would you be talking about? Is that water or something else?
Well, I think the Texas Department of Agriculture, I remember one year, it's the only time that I ever voted to access the rainy day fund.
Uh-huh.
We had three different hurricanes at the
Right.
Texas coast in the interim period between budgets.
Does that have much of an impact on agriculture?
It
per
has
se?
huge impact because
Okay.
you have extreme large amount of flooding, a lot of livestock displaced, crops completely lost, farm equipment lost. You have cattle and livestock intermingled and mixed and miles away from where they're going to be.
And do
There's
they
no
carry
fresh-
any insurance for that, or is there insurance for it, or is that
There's-
something we assume as a taxpayer?
There's crop insurance, but
Yeah. What about equipment?
you can insure your equipment.
Do they
You really don't
normally?
insure livestock though. But the problem is
Uh huh.
those insurance companies don't bring you fresh water for your stock because the water you've got. They don't bring you hay.
Yeah.
There's no grazing. I mean, everything's flooded. So you need to coordinate that. You need to coordinate bringing in hay and feed and from other parts of the state. And somebody's got to be the lead agency on that, on the agriculture end of it. And it should be the Texas Department of Agriculture.
Do you think your agency has any responsibility to deal with the drought issue that we've had for the other half of Texas?
I do.
What do you think
I
y'all
think-
should do?
Well, Todd Staples has done a good job, and for him, Susan Combs was great, and for her, Rick Perry.
Uh-huh.
Staples, his kind of number one issue was border security, and I get that. I mean, I chaired the border security committee and worked real close with Todd,
Sure.
shutting those cartels down there. But my focus will be water. We've got a huge problem in this state facing us in the next 50 years. We've got to address it. The last 2 constitutional elections, we passed rating the rainy day fund for $2 billion.
Right.
Prior to that, it was $6 billion in bonds. So we basically have $8 billion sitting over there. Somebody needs to be watchdog over that, and I think it needs to be the Texas Department of Agriculture.
We don't mind a real quick question. Why haven't that $6 billion of bonds, why haven't those bonds been used at all?
I think about
Like you said, they're sitting.
well, about 6.5% of it has been. Most of we have the state divided up into 16 regions.
Right.
Each one of those regions will have their wish list.
Uh-huh.
And then you have to very methodically rate those.
So these haven't gotten to it yet.
Most of that 6% is design. We haven't actually turned any dirt. It's a 50-year plan.
With $6 billion, why did they need $2 billion more? Because it wasn't
Well,
for here.
the $2 billion is going to be used differently. The $6 billion is actually going to be used for projects. The $2 billion is going to be used as a force multiplier. In other words, it will be used to guarantee loans to water districts, municipalities, counties, low interest, and then as those are paid off, it'll be rolled over. So it won't actually be used for construction, but it'll be that $2 billion will be used to enhance and maybe do $10 or $15 billion worth of projects, if that makes sense.
Kind of.
It's going to be leveraged.
Yeah.
Okay, first on the lighter side, you're kind of living my son's dream.
Oh boy.
Ranch and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know how in the world you could bring yourself from going from that ranch into a stuffy office building in the Capitol. But on the more serious side, it seems to me like there's a potential for conflict of interest, and sometimes with conflict of interest, the party will divest themselves. I don't know whether you plan to sell your ranch, or how do you intend to handle apparent or real conflicts of interest?
Well, that's a good question, because we have lawyers in Austin making laws, and we have, all kinds of conflict down there. We have accountants running the budget. And, in this case, I can't think of anything that would directly be a conflict between my operation. There's no subsidies. There's no dollars issued. I guess the only conflict would be I would be the cheerleader and marketeer for Texas agricultural products. I guess I might benefit from that, but I hope obviously the whole industry would. Matter of fact, the requirement, if I divested myself, I would not be eligible to run. One of the requirements to run for Texas Agriculture Commission, you have to be actively engaged in the act of farming or ranching.
Really?
Yes, sir. Not anyone can run for it.
Okay, well,
That is a requirement.
if that's a requirement, that's probably good, but still, it doesn't, because, for instance, Larry's question about the loans, whatever it's called, the Sid's Ranch or whatever, if you needed a loan, wanted a loan.
Well, that's actually illegal.
Well, I
Yeah,
understand.
we can't do that.
But what I'm saying is there's many other instances where your ranch could stand to benefit from actions that you take, decisions you make.
Well, I'll give you an example of why that doesn't happen. I said I also operate a nursery and grow trees. Before I got into elected office, some of my largest customers were the Texas Department of Transportation, state universities, Parks and Wildlife. Once I became an elected official, I can no longer sell to the state of Texas. I cannot do business with the state of Texas. It's illegal. It's in the Constitution that you cannot do that. So I understand your concern, but I'm just trying to reassure you that there are safeguards there to prevent that from happening.
Okay.
Okay, sort of along the same line, I'm a little confused by this, please describe your philosophy of public agricultural management. And you say that only to ensure Texans have a safe, reliable, quality, and affordable source of food. And that could mean anything from price controls to free fertilizer programs for trucking down the road. I mean, what kind of oversight do you really have on the farms and agricultural communities?
Not as much as you'd think. Most of that is on the federal level. Texas Department of Agriculture has oversight over the pest control business, a little bit in the fertilizer. The biggest thing they do is weights and measures. Every gas pump has to be calibrated by Texas Department of Agriculture. If you buy and sell gold, if you weigh trucks, anything with the scales at the post office, they all have to be inspected, certified. So that's one type of consumer protection. That's basically what they do. They don't do meat inspection. They don't do vegetable inspection. None of that.
And no input on any kind of price controls.
There's no price control. State Health Services does all of the food inspections.
And does the Ag Department oversee growing of trees, lumber?
You have to, the Texas Department of Agriculture, if you want to be in growing trees or in the nursery business, you have to get a floral certificate, nursery certificate, and you're inspected annually.
But for timber, like growing pine trees?
I'm not sure on pines, but I'm very familiar with the nursery industry, because they come out and they inspect your nursery. They drive through, make sure you're not infested with fire ants or any other type of disease. They're also responsible for quarantines like the citrus disease that we have in South Texas and things like that.
So are you in the nursery business now?
Yes, sir.
So your guys would come out and inspect your place?
I would have to be inspected. I do annually now, have been, ever since I've been in business.
All right, good, thanks.
Why, just a real quick question, why is weights and measures under that department?
I have no idea. I don't know how that, I think it goes
Because
way,
to be somewhere.
I think it went way back to when we were Republican early, when our government was first formed, because basically you sold your cotton, you weighed it off the farm.
Yeah,
You sold watermelons off the farm. Your cattle, you sold them by weight, and
Bulk.
some of them you sold by the head, and a lot of them you sold it by weight. So most of the weight measures, the farms had, cotton scales, and the feed stores, if you wanted to weigh something, you had to go to the truck scales at the feed store. So I think that's probably what it is.
Seems like gasoline
Railroad
pumps
Commission
would be under the
rules
railroad
the gas.
commission.
Yeah.
Ag Commission is,
Good,
It's been that way forever.
yeah.
You say that the Agricultural Commission does not check the safety of our food, of
Well,
our grown food?
Department of State Health Services is the one that does that.
Okay, how important is it now to have migrant workers? And how can we,
Good question.
how can we ensure ourselves that those migrant workers will be here and then go home?
This is a problem, particularly in agriculture, and others too, but about 70% of the labor used in agriculture is either legal or illegal non-residents, okay?
Just in Texas or something?
In general nationwide, it's about 70%. When it's time to harvest, you've got a short window there, maybe 10 days, you've got to get it in. What I would like to see is to secure the border, seal it off. We can do that. These guys, people that are coming across, are paying coyotes $2,000 a head. They're also making them carry a 50-pound pack of dope with them. We've had, since 2006, 50,000 murders on the Texas-Mexican border. What we should do is make a workable work program where they come work and go home. We document them. They sign up where they're not going to receive any government services. We charge them, whatever that is. Somebody can figure it out. If it's $1,000 or $2,000, they'll gladly pay it. They're paying it now to coyotes. We use that money to fund the system. We don't put any government dollars in it. We get our workforce up here. They stay, they get the job done, they go home. And they'll be glad to do that because the problem they've got now, they're risking their life to get up here. We can still get our food harvested and have our food supply. That's kind of my vision.
What consists of your seasonal, you said in the question, a couple above
14 and
that,
60.
your year-round you have 14, and then seasonally you have upwards to 60.
We could, yeah.
Okay, or I take it those are all legal.
They are. I have to be very, very careful on that. It's a tree farm. It's for this, I have about 13 to 14 year-round hands, but when it comes harvest time, from January to February, we've got to get our trees out of the field, and it's hand labor to get those out. We ball and burlap them, dig them up, and I'll contract guys to bring crews in and harvest those and get them ready for us. Now, it hadn't been that high in the last few years. The economy's been kind of slow. We hadn't needed that many, but at the peak, it was that high.
Towards the end here, you said as a new TDA commissioner, what are the first two changes you envision making? The first one, you said make rural Texas water one of my primary issues.
Right.
It's because it's the most important natural resource. What do you envision there as being a primary issue? Can you explain that, expound on that?
Well, what we have, first thing I'd like to do was, I would make a position of deputy commissioner in charge of water. We've had farmers in your area, over in the Katy Prairie, that have not had irrigation water for the last 3 years. They haven't been able to grow the rice crops. You know, that industry may leave there if that happens one more season. I mean, it's bad. So we have to find a unique balance between industrial, urban, and agricultural use.
What's a deputy of what?
Of deputy commissioner.
Deputy commissioner, okay.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of expanding the government then?
There's deputy commissioners there now.
Okay,
Yeah.
but this would just be for water.
Just, I want one guy watching over the water.
Okay, sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fine, that's fine. These 16 regions that I mentioned earlier, they all have a wish list, but they're not prioritized. We need somebody besides the Texas Water Development Board, which has 3 members on it now, that's it. There's 3 guys over there that are basically in control of that $8 billion and how it gets used. So we need to make sure that there's a proper balance between urban, industrial, and agricultural use. And let me just explain why I think that agricultural use, I actually think, and I believe this, that it has national security importance. And I'll explain that to you. You may think that, well, that's kind of out there. We don't produce enough oil and gas. We're in this country. We're dependent on foreign countries for that, and we're at their mercy. If they want to cut us off, our gas oil, we've seen it go up and spike. One thing we do in this country, we may not make enough TVs or cell phones or enough oil and gas. One thing we do, and we do very well, is produce enough food and fiber for our citizens and a big portion of the rest of the world. Now then, if there comes a point where urbanization and everything gets out of balance, and we can no longer do that, and we become dependent on some foreign power for our food and our clothing, I guarantee we will have lost all of our freedoms. That's what keeps us independent. That's the export that makes America strong. Agriculture is the glue from the very founding of this country that has held it together.
Explain how the Ag Commission gets involved in broadband service.
You know, that's another one of those things. The reason that it's in it, most urban areas have broadband, and it's kind of like if you can remember back, and you will, because we talked about another similar issue earlier, to the rural electrification program that brought rural electricity to rural parts of Texas. The Texas Department of Agriculture has taken the lead on that because broadband there's still many areas of Texas that does not have it in the rural areas. So obviously some agency need to take charge of that. The go-to agency on rural issues has always been the Texas Department of Agriculture.
Do you see that could change, or is that?
You know, I don't see that that broadband issue. I mean, we finally got electricity to everybody. We don't like much having the broadband everywhere we need to go. It's almost
I should think satellite would be available everywhere.
Yeah, so we're just about, I don't have the figures on it, but we gotta be just about done with that program, I would think.
All right. And what do you think needs to be done to encourage younger farmers to move in and take control? And how do you encourage something like that when all the workers are being, immigrants?
Well, the problem is, we've mechanization, it's no longer 50 acres and a mule, family makes a living off of. It's now, 500 to 5,000 acres and highly mechanized and very technical and very intense farming and ranching. Of course, the key to that is start with our children when they're young. I'm a big supporter of 4-H and FFA. I think we build a lot of our leaders through that program. We build a lot of our agriculture leaders, and that's where we develop the interest in taking on these farms and ranches. The figures out there now that 1 in every 7 is involved in agriculture in some way, whether it be processing or manufacturing or trucking or shipping or receiving or distribution or growing or however you want to do it. So we need to make the pathway as easy as possible. I talked earlier about giving those young farmers a hand up, not a handout, but making the pathway as easy as possible if they want to get into farming or ranching and guarantee some of those low interest loans and see if we can't get them involved. One thing that would help on the federal level is making the transition from this estate tax much less burdensome than it has been, the death tax, where we can flow those farms and ranches into the, I know a lot of farmers and ranchers, they're the richest paupers in the county. They've got lots of land, but they don't have any money. They're just, old saying is, dirt poor. So, it's a shame that they had to bust up those families, farms and ranches and, sell them off to pay the inheritance taxes.
Term slips my mind. Trust, is a trust a way of avoiding that requirement? If the ranch is part of a trust, then it doesn't have to be split up and sold because it's not really an inheritance in the sense.
I'm probably not qualified. I'm not an accountant. I'm not an estate planner, but there's certainly some advantages to that. The particulars on it, I probably couldn't tell you, but yeah, you are on to some. There are some ways that you can. I don't think you can avoid all of it, but
that may be something where the TDA wants to get involved.
There you go.
Well, with everything you're talking about doing, I guess something you might want to hear about is what your plans would be with regarding the staffing of the TDA, the bureaucracy, and with the Tea Party background like you have, of course, we will be sensitive to any plans for any significant growth in bureaucracy without significant justification.
Well, I can tell you a lot of things, but let me tell you what I have done.
Okay.
With my staff when I served in government. I had 1 staffer in my district, and I had 1 full-time staffer in Austin. And without exception, I turned money back every budget from my office that was issued to me. I never used it all. Never tried to use it all. During session, I would get interns from the college and maybe hire 1 or 2 more staff, and then at the end of the session, they're gone, and that's it. So I run. If you look at the history of how I ran my office as a legislator, as a chairman, how I ran my committee chairs, and those employees, it was very lean. And I always turned money back to the state. And I'll do the same thing as your ag commissioner.
Now, you're still responsible as ag commissioner for the food stamp program, correct, or is that wrong?
Well, for the child nutrition.
Just for child nutrition.
Right.
Is there going to be growth in that just because of our population growth?
Well, yes. I mean, I don't know that the Ag Commission can do anything about it. For instance, USDA now has a proposed rule that if your school signs up 40% of your students on free and reduced lunch,
right,
everybody gets it.
Yeah, well, we heard about that.
That's just crazy. So, one thing that the Commissioner of Agriculture can do is make sure that no one's fudging to get up to that 40%. Yeah, you can really scrutinize that. But your hands are kind of tied as to what, you're going to have to implement whatever they send you.
Right. Thank you.
We've gone 30 minutes on questions.
Okay, we really liked your answer on, please discuss the challenges TDA has dealing with define might be the better word, federal agencies. And you gave some real good broad-based answers there. Can you give us some specific examples of places where you've run up against the federal government and you've made progress, you've won?
Well, one thing we run up against all the time, and I've testified before the Department of Interior on offshore drilling against the endangered species. Right now, the Humaniacs have filed 200 different species in Texas to be put on the endangered species list, and all they're trying to do is shut down our oil and gas production, agriculture, So, I've had a history of standing up to those guys and fighting them, and I'll do it as ag commissioner also. We just, if I will push back against these wacko environmentalists, the Obama administration that try to put our farmers and ranchers out of business, and by doing that, they're jeopardizing the safety and the quality and the affordability of our food for our mothers trying to feed their families.
Be nice to get them on that endangered species.
Yeah. And pushback is great, but what are your thoughts about, as I mentioned earlier, slip of the tongue, but a Freudian slip, defiance? In other words, feds come in and say, you can't do this, and you say, oh, yes, we are.
Well, you'd have to
10th
take...
Amendment.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly strong on the 10th Amendment and states' rights, and your particular question, you'd have to take each issue on its own merit.
Right.
I don't know if I'd want to commit suicide over certain things, but certain things I probably would. I think Governor Perry was right turning down the education funds. I support him on that. I don't think we should always take every handout that the federal government gives us. Especially if it obligates future legislatures to funding that. One-time appropriation is probably okay. We did that once with some of that education money, and we came back the next session, and the superintendents and the teachers' unions and everybody screamed bloody murder because we were cutting $500 million out of the budget. Don't y'all remember? We told you that's the one time. So I'm not even sure is worth it then, because I think regretted it. This conservatives regretted it doing then, because they just don't remember.
Got a yes or no question?
Sure.
Do you think Ted Cruz committed suicide?
No.
With what he did? Okay.
No.
Back to the school lunch and the programs. I mean, I guess there's a program for lunch and one for breakfast and one after school and one during the summer, just almost all day long.
The only thing we're missing is bedtime snacks.
That's not in it.
Some on the next page, probably. And looking at the job description, it says that the Texas Ag Department administers the U.S. Department of Agriculture school lunch. So, do they have people in your office, or does the Ag Department have people in the school administration office? Or who sets all the guidelines, and who sets the income thresholds and decides who gets and who doesn't
Well,
get it?
the federal government sets the threshold. It basically works like the EPA and the TCEQ. The federal government says, here's what you gotta do. Now you tell us how you're gonna do it, and we'll either approve it or we won't.
But it's all federal money we're
It's
talking
all,
about.
well, it's our money. It's all our money, but it's
Right.
it's coming from USDA.
Right. Not state tax dollars.
Right.
So we
Not
could.
taxes. It's not coming out of the Texas portion of the budget.
Right.
So
But
we
it is in Texas budget because it flows back from the federal
Federal
government.
government, gotcha.
But we just don't have any say over it.
And if we don't do it right, they would, the way they want, they would not give it to us, the feds?
They would pull our transportation funding. They'd punish us in some way.
Because a lot of these
Some other
notification
way.
type rules say that state employees and state funds will not be used to help the U.S. government implement their rules that we don't agree with.
Right.
You familiar with some of those?
I've heard of those,
Yeah.
yes.
10th Amendment Foundation
Right.
kind of stuff.
Right.
So, but they are in fact using Texas manpower to administer this program under federal guidelines. Huh?
That's true. It's true.
Okay. We'll stop that, huh?
I don't know if you ever.
Can I just
Go ahead,
throw-
yeah.
I do have a pet peeve on the nutritional program, and Susan Tone was one responsible for this, but she put, and I don't know if y'all even know about this, but she put in the cupcake law.
Oh,
Yes, I
That
know
was-
about the cupcake law.
And I just hate
And
that.
it's totally wrong.
that's the birthday law? That
Well,
one?
Yeah.
No, you
Homemade-
just can't,
It's the
homemade goods.
dumbest
you can't bring
thing.
cookies or cupcakes, you know, we might make somebody fat. I mean, that's just the nanny state, it's just too much, girl. I mean,
Seriously.
just, you know, if we wanna have a Christmas party, or you wanna give out Valentine candy, or, come on,
A Christmas party.
yeah. Christmas party.
Christmas, yeah.
Spelled with a CH.
Hanukkah parties.
Yeah, so, I mean,
I-
that's just, I'd like to overturn that.
How did
It'll take
Susan
legislation
Combs-
to do
But
it.
that's when she was ag commissioner, huh?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I see something else that needs to be overturned. I don't know if any of you've ever been present in
Wait, I put that down.
schools.
You'll overturn the cupcake law,
Well,
right?
I can't do it, but I will advocate turning over.
Okay, my wife will want to know this.
If you've ever been at school and they have mandated what children can be served at school,
Right.
and you sit there and when they get up to leave, after they've supposedly eaten, all of that stuff, untouched usually, goes in the trash can, can't even be, unopened stuff can't even be picked
That's
up
right.
and sent to,
Pig slop.
Yeah.
well,
Good
we
pixel.
have homeless people who are starving. There's
Actually,
so
I
much
passed a
waste
law
in
to
that.
stop that. I stopped that myself. No more slop from the school.
Oh, shucks.
You can't make children eat things they don't like.
No, of
Like
course not.
apples.
And we're wasting so much
Oh, I
time
know.
and money in that, and that's a waste. How safe is our food crop?
You know, I think we have the safest food supply in the world, especially if you compare it to a lot of countries. One thing that could be done, I think that would be of nutritional value, that we don't do near enough of. Everything is so all our food services are so institutionalized. But I think you could do something to encourage locally grown, fresh produce, like that at the local level. Give those school districts some room, allow them to do some of that on a local level. And that
They
would
can't do
promote-
that now? I didn't know
Well,
that.
it's not real easy. It's not. Not as easy as you think. It's
If they
pretty
wanted to
messed up.
stop us from growing our own tomatoes,
Yeah.
Really?
come arrest me now.
Individually.
Do we have any laws or anything? How are we, how does the Ag Commission, yeah, you forgot to,
That's my question.
how does the Ag Commission, how does the Ag Commission police and see that, that we're not having the Monsanto type,
That's what
I
I
don't
was,
remember
yeah.
what the food.
The engineered food.
Engineered food.
Frankenfood.
Mhm.
Well, it's GMO, it's genetically modified organisms.
I like that stuff, though.
You do?
Yeah.
It's-
That's
Have you ever
chocolate
tasted
thing.
the real stuff?
Both.
Basically what they do is they change one enzyme in the plant.
Yeah.
The human body doesn't even have that enzyme, so it's relatively safe.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
All crazy.
some of the third world countries have a deficiency in vitamin A.
That's true.
So Monsanto did the bioengineering, if you're for it, it's bioengineering. And they developed a form of rice that was high in vitamin A.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a good use of it, I think. And we have a finite amount of water, finite amount of farmland, but our population keeps expanding, so we've got to use some biotechnology to feed the world. Also a big proponent of organically grown. I think there's a huge market for that. There's nothing, I don't have anything against it,
If
but you
it's-
just can't.
If it's
Feed-
truly organically grown.
And there's a certification program for that, and the Texas Department of Agriculture does have jurisdiction over that. But the two can live together. So I think there's a place for both. And as agriculture commissioner, it's not my job to pick winners and losers. It's my job to
Right.
make sure that everybody's a winner. And that's the way I would approach it.
Well, there has been a huge increase in diagnosed autoimmune diseases of all sorts of flavors. And there is a segment of the population that wonders if there's a correlation between that
Sure.
and GMO.
Oh, I
There
know.
is none. That's just
Easy for you to
My
say.
wife won't.
fear mongering.
And that's that was always my favorite, and it is, it's corn.
And that's why the organic Whole Foods
Yeah,
is
exists.
taking off. I
Yeah,
mean, there's a definite market for that. Do I think it's probably, I know it's probably healthier for you. It's good. But we also have a responsibility to feed, it's not, you know, everybody can go to Whole Foods. We don't have enough of it.
Got one of those coming in here pretty quick. I noticed in a lot of your answers, you check a lot of the Tea Party
I like my tumors.
and advocacy and whatnot, but I also see in here, I will work to encourage, work to ensure. Can we get more of a commitment out of you to do these things as far as eliminating, and more times than not for these questions, it's public subsidies?
Well, I'm, as a farmer and rancher, I don't even support corn subsidies or ethanol subsidies. I don't, I'm a free market guy, just let the market take its place. I think the reason I put that in there is because I don't really have the platform that I did as a legislator to make law or pass law.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say encourage or pursue or whatever it says, one of the advantages I have over the other candidates running is I do have a relationship with every statewide elected official, with members of the House, serve with members of the Senate there, and I can encourage my friends in the legislature to change that law or to improve this or to repeal the cupcake law, or, I do have that influence. Do I have a vote? No. But as agriculture commissioner, and having my friends in the places that they're in, I think